Hello there, everybody. Welcome to BEEMAN.DEV Saturday night live stream, where I will work on building this Twitter UI that you can see right here with Tailwind. And actually, what you're looking at is what I already built. Now, without further ado, let me quickly post on Twitter that I'm doing a live stream. Maybe somebody wants to see it. So if you bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to tweet out, we are live now. Add some emoji. I'm very sorry. And live now, check it out. And this gets the icon BEEMAN.DEV Saturday night live stream. So bear with me 1 more second while I get this all ready. Yes. Rebuilding the Twitter UI using Tailwind CSS. Now, thank you all for your patience. And here we go. It's tweeted out. Okay, thank you all very, very much for waiting on me. And let me zoom in the screen so we can take a better look. Now, this is something I've been playing with since basically yesterday night. I gave it some thought already, and I really wanted to check out what it looks like to rebuild Twitter's UI, or at least the basics, using Tailwind. If you look on YouTube, there's a ton of videos of people that are doing imitations of Tailwind sites, and I just wanted to give it a go to see how versatile it is. Now, initially, my goal was to make it pixel perfect, and if you see switching around these two, the original and the copy, basically, you can see that it's not pixel perfect, and yeah, the lines are not totally lined up, and there's basically a ton of small spacing issues that make it look perfect, besides things like the color. But I'm not really worried about the color. I was really more worried about the layout. Now, one of the things that happens with the real Twitter UI is that they seem to not use a grid system, but they seem to have fixed width for several things. So I think this bar on the side is like 600 pics, the one on the right-hand side here, and this one I think is like 300. It doesn't really matter, but they don't use a grid system, and Tailwind obviously does. And in order for this, to get this working as close as possible, I had to create a custom grid, which is kind of interesting to look at. Let me quickly open the source code here. So this is the Tailwind Twitter app, and you can find it on my GitHub, github.com/beeman, Tailwind-Twitter. And if we take a look at the Tailwind config here, you can see that inside the theme, I added a custom blue color. So the blue I reference will be light blue. I ended, first I added the grid template columns, which give me a 16 grid, but that wasn't the correct one. And it gave me a 24 grid, which was close. And then I needed to have a span of 19. So how this works in this layout is that this left-hand side is one part of the grid, and then this whole right-hand side is the other. So this one is 5 units, and this one is 19. And actually, I think with the grid inspector, yes, we can take a look at this, how this works. There you go. So here you can see we have 24 grids, and then this whole part takes the first 5, and then this, the next 19. And then inside of the 19, I created another grid of 12. And this 12 grid, let me toggle off the other one, the outer one. And then the 12 grid divides the first half into 7 and the next half into 5. And this was basically as close as I could get it without adding like really custom dimensions, which I didn't really want to go into. Or probably a bigger grid would work as well, because I think, I mean, if you would add a 64 column grid, you can probably position it pretty darn close. But I think it's kind of hacky. And so what I want to do right now is take this new app that I have. I started out a new application. I scaffolded it out with NXPM. NXPM, for those of you who are not aware, is a tool that I've been working on. NXPM. More specifically, the NXPM stack is a tool that I've been working on. This allows you to scaffold out a full stack platform using Prisma, Angular, Nest, NX, and GraphQL. It lacks a lot of stuff like documentation, for instance, but it works pretty well. And I've been working with it for the last basically 2 or 3 months on it and working with it for the last few months. It's not even this one, it's NXPM.org. I'm really sorry, folks. I was a bit caught off guard there. This is it. And we do have some documentation because it tells you how to use it. But you can install the CLI globally and then initialize a new project, go to that project and follow the instructions. And this gives you a full stack backed by Prisma, running in the Postgres database. It's all configured for you. It has authentication, and it comes with a basic layout in Bootstrap. It has basic Tailwind support. And what I decided to do is clear out my whole layout. So there's a pretty well thought out structure here. But basically your layout here is the main app layout. I have some components here that I'm not going to use right now, so I can probably just delete them. And it's this layout where we're going to build the page. Now, if we look at how I built Tailwind Twitter, let's move quickly back to that. I didn't even create components for it, so I actually created it all in one huge HTML file, which makes development pretty damn quick because you can just like add more components. And I commented it all, so basically this could give you an idea of how you would split this up into several components. So the goal for us today is take Twitter's layout, start with this viewport, start with the mobile viewport actually, so the smallest viewport, and start re-implementing it. And I'm not going to worry too much about pixel perfectness because I think it doesn't really, it's nice to show off that it's pixel perfect, but on the other hand, I prefer to have a bit cleaner code and have it as good as is. If people have other opinions about it, let me know. I'm definitely happy. I'm also going to pop open the chat so I can see if people are having opinions about this. Without further ado, let's open a Twitter account that we're going to use as a reference. And I think I'm going to use my Bsoft Labs, which is the foundation, our foundation we have here in Colombia. More on that probably later in a different stream. But in any case, we have a special Twitter account. And what sorry, that didn't go as planned. What I'd like to do is start out with this basic mobile view here, which I can get nice and tight in one screen. And open this one here as well. And this should work as expected if I just reopen it. So closing and reopening it gives me the same viewport for this one. And actually, we can make it a bit smaller because we have some more room. Or I might pop the inspector on the sidebar. Let me quickly play around with how this works, because I see that here we're at 94%, and I prefer working at 100%. And maybe have the bar here on the side and drag that to be a bit smaller, if that works. That looks like it works pretty well. Okay, cool. So okay, give it this some room here. Now inside the real Twitter, close and open the bar, and that will give you the same dimensions in both cases, which is super useful because now we can switch around and see what works and what lines up and what doesn't. So there you go. We should be having HMR here. So this is Angular 11. So if I add something right here, it should reload without refreshing. And it generally takes some time to catch up. Hello there. Let's see what it does. Let's refresh. Okay, I'm not going to bother with that at this moment. So, yeah, we've been used to working that way anyway. So here we go. One of the things I did was here in Tailwind config, and I'm actually using ng-needs Tailwind package, which I think is the best one for Angular. I set the dark mode to class, which means if at some point up the tree it finds the class with the word dark, it will add the dark styles, or will apply dark styles. And I added the plugin, form plugin here. So I get my form fields basically normalized in a way that's pretty good, actually. It's one of the official Tailwind plugins. Then without further ado, let's open up the template. So we're going to go opening the web layout template, and I'm going to start out with the main div, get rid of the text here, keep the router outlet inside of it because eventually we want to route out our content. This div is going to be my main page. And what I'm going to do first and foremost is focus on dark mode. And I might in another stream, or maybe in this stream, I don't know how far we go, I might add a toggle so you can toggle the themes, but for now this is going to be a dark app. So we're going to say background gray, which is with an A, and we're going to go for the darkest tint of gray. And the dark semicolon means that we're addressing dark mode. So if the dark toggle is set, this will be the color that's applied. Say we want to have a light gray. If we don't have it, let's for a quick test do this. For a light, say we say, okay, on the light mode, on the non-dark mode, we get a gray of 50. And in Tailwind, the lower values are light and the higher values are darker. For text, in the dark mode, we're going to say text gray and do like 200. In the normal mode, we're going to say text gray and get 900 here. See, I got auto completion here, which is super awesome and useful. When this refresh, we see a blue bar, dark blue. It's the gray color, but it's actually dark bluish. And one of the things that you can note directly is that it doesn't take full height. And this is basically how a div behaves in any sort of system. Normal div just takes whatever the content height it gives us. Now we can use height full, h full here. But when this refreshes, you see that nothing happens. The height doesn't change. And this is because height full only works depending on its parent height. So this will set it, the div that we just added here, let's search for it here. This div will take full height, but only depending on its parent. And its parent right now is body. The first block parent is body. And body doesn't have any height assigned, nor has HTML. So this is one of the most classic tricks in the book. I think a lot of you developers that are watching it know this trick. You have to say HTML and body height, take a height of 100 view height. This is 100% height, and when it now refresh, we should see that this takes all the height of the page, just as we expected. Now, the reason we don't see it immediately is that Tailwind works by using post CSS, and it turns out that if you make a change into your index.scss, it generally takes a while for it to catch us up. And for me, this is like one of the downsides of using it, but it definitely beats the alternative of writing all the HTML yourself. I really, really love using Tailwind. I've been working with it for not even a month, I think, like really trying it out. And yeah, I'm definitely super, super excited by it. And so yeah, you have to take a few things for granted. And but here we go. We see now that our page is full and our page is 100% height. Now, if we open index.html and we get rid of our dark class, so let's just get rid of dark, and we can see that it now will re-render in light mode. And later on, this will be our way of doing theme switching, basically applying the dark theme and getting rid of the dark theme should trigger a theme switch. And let me see if I can get this one. App is up to date. Let me hard refresh this. There you go. It's white background and a very dark gray text. And if it now updates, we might need to refresh this. And then it will turn back to dark. But we're going to focus on dark mode in here anyway. Yeah, let me refresh this. There you go, dark mode. Okay, cool. Now, first thing I want to do whenever I'm building a layout like this, I'm thinking about which sections I can see. Now, one of the sections I can see, and let's give it just a div, and the comment above here saying this is the top bar. And the top bar has three parts. It has an icon, avatar. It has a title, which is in this case latest tweets, and it has another icon. Let's make this just the avatar. So it has the avatar, the title, and the icon, and this is the whole top bar. So that's this section. Then we have a scrolling area, which takes our tweets, which lists our tweets, And we can consider that being our router outlet, because if we want to add more pages to this, let's say we're going to go to messages here, then you can see that the top bar changes, but this page sticks there. So this is basically whatever we're going to route to. So we leave that up here. I'm going to wrap it in a div though, so we can directly address whatever our router outlet is. And then the bottom bar, we have another div and we say, okay, this is the bottom bar. And the bottom bar has 4 icons: home, search, notifications, and messages. And this is on the mobile layout only. So if we get rid of the mobile layout, and I can quickly toggle this blue button here, you can see that this already takes the layout that you're used to on a wide screen on a desktop, which has the navigation on the sidebar. And then we also see if we have like the non-mobile layouts that we don't have this avatar here, but the avatar goes back here. So these are some things to take into account. But I think it's a good idea to work mobile first. So let's do just that. Work on the top bar with an avatar, an icon, and a title. Now for this div, what I actually want to do is give a div for the avatar. And this will have an image. And the image that I'm going to use is actually my BSoft Labs image. And I'll show you a trick for those of you that don't know it. You can take your GitHub username, BSoft Labs in this case, and add .png, and this will link you to your avatar. And you can link to github.com/username.png directly, but I'd recommend waiting for this URL to expand, because this is the cached CDN version, and it will render faster when you use this one over the short one. But we can add this here, and we can add an alt text of user avatar, and this should render out a huge image right here. Now we don't want this image to be this big, so let's add a class and say, I think a height of, so what would it be, maybe 12, and a width of 12. And this is using Tailwind's scaling system. I'm not going to explain all the properties and where I found them, because you will find out if you're using Tailwind, this will be a pretty quick process, but you can find everything right here. The site is amazing. And you can say width and search for the width item. And here you see that each of the items has a number of rem, and this can be mapped to pixels. But as a matter of fact, you don't really need to know how many pixels there are. You can just, at a certain moment, you get a feel for it. But if you look at the auto completion here, you can see that it will tell you, okay, width 12 is 3 rem, width 16 is 4 rem. And for those of you who can calculate quickly, this is always divided by 4. So if you want to have, if you have width 32, then you can see it's 8 rem. And the rem value translates to pixels. I don't know the formula for that, but you can make a mental map. What I tend to do in most of my apps, if I'm not rebuilding a UI, I stick with certain values and keep them across, use them across my app, so that spacing is pretty much consistent. Ryan says, nice trick. Yes, Ryan, that is a great trick. Thanks for hanging around. It's good to see you here. Yeah, I love this PNG trick. I actually learned it when I was at the StackBlitz team, and I think they actually use it there, which is pretty neat. And while we're on the subject, github.com/beeman.keys will list you my private keys. So if you ever want to build a system and you want to give me access to it, like automatically with SSH, with my private SSH keys, you can grab my public keys and pass them on to your system, and you're basically granting me access with my private key to your system. I don't know, there might be other things actually. github.com/username.something. These are the two that I know of. So yeah, cool. So we start out with the avatar, and when we look at this, we see, okay, it's actually smaller in the example that we're using. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 12, which I think we had. This 12 already looks a bit better, but it's actually smaller. So let's nudge it down a little bit and say we're going to use, like, what is it, 8 maybe? 8 might be too tiny. but there's only one way to find out. Actually, 8 is pretty darn close. And one of the things we can see that we need some padding inside this top bar so that it doesn't really touch the edges there. So that's another thing that we're going to do. Now in these things, I'm probably going to stick with 3 in this case. If this looks well for the avatar, then 3 is going to be it. Okay, it does jump a little bit, and we can now also clearly see that it is a bit smaller. So, okay, let's, without the risk of diving too much into the details and getting it pixel perfect, let's see if 7 works better. Yep, 7 is actually the height of the image. And now we can see that the padding on our copy is a bit too less on the x-axis. So I'm going to change this P here, make this the Y padding, so on the vertical axis, and then PX on the horizontal axis, I'm going to make it 4. So this will give a bit more spacing on the horizontal axis, and it will leave the spacing as is for the vertical axis. And now you can see that we're getting pretty darn close to having this avatar. Now, next thing I'm going to do is add the title here, and it says it's a div. So we add a div, and it says latest tweets. And this div has this text has some styling to it. Now, it might seem overkill, but I'm going to add another div just for the text styles. And the reason I do it is because this div, the outer one, this one is going to be used to position our element inside the bar. This div and its content is actually going to make sure that the text is properly styled. And later I might decide to pull them back into a singular one for whatever reason. But for now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set the font to semi-bold and the text size, I'm going to guess here, 2XL. And let's see what it is. How it works. Okay, so the text, I think we're on the large side, and it does seem that it's bolder in the example. And first and foremost, we're not on the same line. So let's do the old trick, add a little border here and say border pink 500. So we can see the actual bar. And I'm going to copy over this border into the other one and make it like yellow here. I hope it's in the standard set. And red here. And then in the last bar that we didn't even talk about yet, the side icon there, I'm going to make it green. So here, and this is the icon. Now this should give us the 3 divs below each other. That's good, as expected. Now, in order for this to render properly, we're going to use the flex box. So we're just going to apply flex, and this should put the icons side by side and connect them each to each other. So far, so good. Another thing I want to do is say item center. Make sure that these things vertically align, and you can see the outer one here, jump back to the middle if we add this item center. And I really love this utility because it prevents you from having to apply to each of these individual ones this styling set. Now, one of the things you can see that's already different is that the icon needs to be on the right-hand side, which is not currently. And one easy way to do it is go to this title div here and say flex-grow. Flex-grow makes sure that they take all the available space, and the other one will be pushed aside. So here we go with our icon on the side. And it looks like the icon edges match up quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is make the text a bit smaller. So instead of text 2XL, I'm going to do text XL. And hopefully this gives back a bit of horizontal space. And what we also can see is that actually there's a big space between the avatar here and the latest tweets, wherever that begins. So in order to address that, here on the avatar itself, I'm going to say a margin to the right, and I'm going to say, let's say 6. And scroll back here to see, and we see this gets pretty close. Now bear in mind we have borders, and they always take spaces. So the reason this is a visible shift, mainly because we added borders. Let's do a quick trick here, and instead of getting an icon, so it's kind of tedious while you're developing the layout, also worrying about finding the right icons for this. I'm not super fast at it, and I think they also take a lot of space if you paste in the raw XML, which is awesome, but it does take a lot of space. So what I decided to do in the other design that I did today or yesterday night was basically add a div, give it a height and a width. There we go. Just leave it empty as is because this will already take space. And then give it a background color. And in this case, I'm going to say blue. And I'm going to take like whatever, 500. This will give me a little square block of 7 by 7 with the blue background. And this should be enough to get at least a visual idea like, okay, this is where we will get an icon. And actually, I'm going to make it 6 because I think that's a better size. Now, and I will use something similar for these buttons below. And then later on the final touch, I can go ahead, find images, and I know exactly which I want and can find them all together, make sure they all match up and add images all at once. So this is a little trick I've been using and I really like. Now, for now, I think this top bar is getting near where we want it to be. So let's get rid of all of these borders here. And we should see that this now looks pretty close to whatever we have. So I think the avatar matches up nicely. The icon matches up nicely. Only the latest tweets jumps around. And I'm going to give this a margin right of 7 to see if that fixes it. And it seems like that already does a bit of better job. Let's try it. Just to see what that gives us. I think I like it with 8. It also is something to note that it does line up with the tweets here. So whatever we're going to build out down here will also dictate how this will look. So for now, I think this is oh, let's not do that. For now, let's leave it as is right here, latest tweets. And what we see is that they have a bar here on the bottom. So this will live on the top bar. So we're going to say border -B. And in dark mode, we're going to say border gray. We're going to go 1 gray lighter than our background. Now remember that our background is gray 900, so 1 gray lighter would be gray 800. And this should give us a thin hairline below our latest tweet top bar. I think it's a bit on the too thin side, so what I'm going to do, you can make it thicker, but you also can pick a lighter tint, and this will generally give a similar effect. There you go. And yeah, I think that's pretty close to where we want it to be. And now, what I want to look at is the bottom bar, actually. And the bottom bar, we realize that we have 4 buttons there. So I'm going to copy over this faux button, and I'm going to just paste them in 4 times. And keep the comments where they should be, and this makes it later easier for us to split it up or to make it dynamic. But this is actually the bottom bar, and I'm going to do the trick with the border again. I just really like seeing what I'm working with, so this is a quick way adding a border. Basically any color will do as long as it's a bit of clear color. Here you go. Okay, so few issues with our icons. To start out, one of the issues is that they go below each other, which is the default if we have a set of divs. This can be changed by adding, oh, not div, adding flex. And flex will put them all side by side. And flex will put them all side by side next to each other. And what I think we want to do here is say justify content, justify between. Justify content between is a bootstrap. Justify between is the word to do this in. I'm going to do this here. Okay, this kind of works, but this gives no room on the side. And whereas right here, we do want to have room on the side. So let's quickly see how these things, yeah, these things take up all their space. Okay, interesting. So these things have a div here. This is basically the A tag, and this takes up all the space. So it gets divided in 4 separate ones. So let's see if there's something for that. Or actually, you know what? It might be something else. So what we might want to do, I'm going to quickly go ahead and try this. So add a div around each of these ones. Be a faster way for this, but I'm not aware of it. So a div around all of these one, then address all of these divs and give it a class of block. Also, just to see what we're working with, again, I'm going to say they're going to have a background of red 200, which is a very light red. This should give us some distinction on how these things work, okay? They all get a flex grow, so they all take their maximum width. There you go. And now we're going to say, and I think this text center will actually do the trick. And this should give us 4 icons. Not do the trick. Okay, so what I need to do inside this is a flag box, and it needs to justify center in between. As you all can see, I'm not super fluent yet, but here we go. Okay, so this starts to look like our bottom bar where we have 4 icons. Now I can already see that these icons are a bit taller and wider. So let's grab all the -6 up here and make it 8. And another thing I already seen, yeah, this looks like it's a better idea of what it is. Yep. And these things also have a lot of spacing. Now there's generally 2 ways to go about it. You can either do it outside, do a padding. Here, I think I'm going to go for a padding. All of these things that are called block. I might not need block, by the way. Let's get rid of block. I don't need block, okay. And if we want to be close to Twitter, this is actually an A. So let's move this to an A, see if this is still the same. Okay, cool, so now we have 4 anchor tags that have an icon. It's just that the icon's not really doing anything. We have a background red. And what I want to do with these is give here some padding. And with the top bar, bear in mind that we had a padding of vertical padding of 3 and a horizontal padding of 4. In this case, I think we only need the vertical padding because the horizontal padding is already there. So I'm going to quickly update this P3 to be PY3. And then we should have some visible icons there. There you go. Have some nice spacing around them. And they should be properly centered. Then last thing we want to do, which is probably one of the most obvious, is that the bar is not on the bottom. So we want to have the bar, the icon bar on the bottom, and then the tweets need to scroll. Now, the way to do this is actually add another div. That's always the solution when you're working with Tailwind and doing such things. Generally starts out with adding more div. Let me take a sip of water and do just that. Okay, perfect. So this is the thing that we want to scroll. And quickly click back to our example here. We can get rid of the background red because we don't really no longer care about this background, and this should make the icons a bit more like they are. Now, what we want to happen is that the green bar with the green border goes all the way to the bottom. And then the one with the pink border that I'm just about to add, this needs to take full space. We already know that flex grow will take up the full space. So we can add flex grow here, but this will not really do anything. And the reason is that this doesn't live in a flex class itself. So we added this one, but this is not a flex class. So I'm going to make it flex. And as we know, flex will pop it all next to each other. So this will do a horizontal thing, which is not what we want. So let's add flex-col to make this behave like a normal div again. What we can see now is that this is whatever we want to achieve. So with the addition of flex and flex-col and setting flex grow here at the middle one, we basically stretch it all out and we push the footer to the back, which is just what we want. So this is getting pretty close, if you ask me. And let's quickly toggle. Yeah, I think we are pretty close. So the icons are a bit on the large side. So let me move these 8 to a 7. And this should already make them a bit less tall. And then you can see that this is actually pretty close. And I think if we can get rid of the borders, it will be basically as good as we're going to do it. So take these 2 borders and get rid of them. Once we scroll back, we actually need a border on the top. Yeah, so we need a border on the top of our buttons here. So this is the bottom bar. I'm going to grab this border bottom from the top bar. I'm going to change it to border top from the top bar. And when we hit save, we should now have an identical line. One is on the bottom and the other on the top. And this looks really, really close. I'm super happy with how this is coming along. Get rid of this icon, and yeah, I'm not going to close the help because I will most likely need it in a little bit. And in order for this page to work, it needs to scroll. And in order for this to scroll, we need to have content. And I don't think right now I'm going to be bothered with adding real content. Let's open the component that renders this page home in the middle. It's actually not page home. I was cheating. It's called the dashboard feature. I'm going to copy this, call it .html. So I don't generally like external templates in using an Angular. I'm more of a single component, single file component type of guy. But it doesn't really work with the completion of Tailwind yet. So I suppose that there will be a fix soon that will address this, but right now that's not it. Now inside where we're going to render this, what I'm going to do here is add a div and add a vertical padding of, let's say 8, and give it a background color. Let's do this in dark mode. It doesn't really matter. It's temporary anyway. Background color, and do like 700. Yep. And this another one of 800. And I'm going to add a few more of these, and this should give us a whole list of items here. Okay, something's wrong. Let's see if we have an error. Something doesn't render quite well. We don't have an error. We don't have content. That's a good one. Yeah, div needs content before it will render. So let's grab all the final divs and say content item. So we can just at least have something to look at. So, and here we can already see a few things going berserk. Now that's not bad because we can all fix this. So let's take a look at how we'd fix this. And those of you that are familiar with CSS say overflow. Yes, you're right. This is overflow. And what we want to do here on the flex grow one, we're going to say overflow auto. Same in Bootstrap and in Tailwind. And this gives us the auto flow. And it just works like this, like a charm. So now we're there. And from doing a quick, what are we here? We're in for 40 minutes. Well, not sure if this is quick, but pretty quick. Getting to a layout that works, that's very, very similar to the one we're looking at. Now, one thing I'm not going to be worrying about is embedding these images just yet. I think for now, it's probably better to focus on the text tweet. So let me do a quick refresh to see if there's some new content. No, that's not. It's like 12 o'clock midnight here, so I'm not really surprised by that fact. But I'm going to add some sample data. So pick up the dashboard feature component here, but the component class, and I'm actually going to call these ones posts. And posts have a text. They have an author, and author has some other properties, namely username. We call this one BEEMAN_NL. Name itself, which is your public name, which is BEEMAN, and then the icon. For the author, that's it. So we have the text of the tweet. We have the author information. We're going to use the created at to show when it is displayed. So this will be, in this case, 36 minutes. Next will be, we are live now. And add some emoji here. This is just going to be a one-line tweet because I don't really need it to be that much taller. And then lastly, what we can see here, if we look at the information, okay, we have avatar URL, which is also a property of the author, avatar URL, and doing again the trick to get my avatar URL from GitHub. There you go. So pop this one in, editor URL right here, avatar URL right here. So we have avatar name, username, created at, we have the text of the tweet, and now we want to have a retweet count, which is 6, and a like count, a like count of 4. Right, so this is one tweet, and quickly duplicate it and make one variation. Take whatever Danny CM. I'm sorry, this not. Let's not even bother. I'm just gonna add a count tweets and just do that. I'm egoistic like this. Not an issue. So coming back to this item, so now what we can do is take an ng container and do an ng for that post of posts. And for each of our posts, drag in one of these items. And I'm just going to try to rebuild this one here. So I'm not even not bothered by that. So what I'm going to do here is background code. No, I actually want to do a border button. So I got this here in my clipboard history, and a few of the fields that I have here. So let's see the autonomy of one tweet, which is a sidebar. Or basically it's divided in two. We have one area here, which is the icon, and then all the rest is what has the name, username, the time when it was there, the tweet itself, and the 3 or 4 buttons down here below. So again, let's do just that. We're going to have this main div, and then we're going to have one area, which is the avatar. And this is the tweet. Let's call this the tweet. And another div. And then inside here, we're going to have a div that is the user info. So the author info, author tweet. And this has the name, username, and updated at. Created at. This is what it actually is. Created at. This is when the tweet is created. Then down there, we have the actual message, actual text, should I say. And then lastly, we have the buttons. That's buttons, not this way, which is another div. And then it has a button called comment, and called retweet, one of the likes, and one of the shares. So this is the autonomy of our object. And this is what I really like to think about these things. And then basically pass in some info so we can say the image, and we can again grab my avatar that I have here. And this will be, I know it's on the post object. I don't even need it. So we can say attribute.source, post.image, post.author.avatar URL. So here in the alt text user avatar. That's it. And for the author, we can say, okay, render out the post.author.name, post.author.username, and post.createdAt. Post.createdAt, and these ones are separated by a mid dot, so we can say ampersand mid dot. Have that one, and that I think it is. I'm going to really quickly ignore this little button right here because I didn't really notice it, and I'm not going to do drop downs or whatever this pattern is called, action bar, whatever. Not going to bother with this. So let me quickly update this, put username there, and put the labels where they are. Then lastly, I'm going to add here the post.text, which is the text of the post, and then here the comment. I'm going to go ahead and copy one of the images we have here from the footer, and I'm going to make them smaller. So this is going to be 5 for me, and they're going to be gray. 700, I think. Same item as the line. Now this works the same way as the other ones on the bottom. So we already know how to do it. I'm going to show another trick here in a little bit, how we can separate these out in another way. But for now, this is the whole autonomy of one single tweet. And we can see that right now, this doesn't really look like anything yet, because we have a huge image, we have the 4 buttons down here and it's all inline. So let's fix this. First thing to fix this is put the avatar on the side. So we're going to do a flex again, and this puts the avatar on one side and the text on the other. And then we see that the text is way too large, or the image is way too large. So one of the things we're going to do for this image is give it a class and say width, go with 12 here, and the height as well, 12. And I'm going to be back at the chat in a second and see what this goes. Okay, seems like 12 is pretty damn close to what we want. So we're going to say that this is rounded full. So Prettier doesn't want me to put this on a new line. Okay, and see whatever we did here. Okay, so we have a padding Y here. Okay, so make this one smaller, make this one 3. And I think for now that's what we're going to do. Maybe of 3 or 4 again. 4. 4 sounds nice. And this is pretty close. So now the image jumps around, which is interesting. And text as well. So let's for a second say hi to the people in the chat. Hi, Derlis Dominguez Mota, which is my wife. Hello, lovely wife. Thanks for you being here. Hey there, Ciao. Ciao is a resident on my channel. Still impressed and pleased to look at Tailwind Intelligence. Well, so am I. It's kind of sad that it doesn't work inline yet, because I'm a big fan of inline components, but it's super nice to have it, and it really helps out. And for your other question, no, I'm not running HMR. Well, I am running HMR. If I look at how I start the server, it should have HMR. Here you go, but it doesn't pick it up. I'm not really sure. Maybe in workspace.json, in the serve of, yeah, I'm using the custom Webpack builder and it's version 11, I'm pretty sure. Package.json, custom Webpack builder. Yeah, I'm using the beta. I'm not sure. It's an NX workspace. Just created it. Not sure why it not work. We can try to restart it, by the way. Let's just quickly restart the server. Will not be the first time that a restart fixes something like this. So when we look at the UI, I think we're getting pretty close to rendering out one tweet. I'm not going to be bothered with the jumping of the images right now. I think that's something that's fine. So yeah, they need to be, the avatar needs a bit more space on the side. And let's do that. The avatar needs a bit more space on the side. So that's going to be a margin right of, let's give it a 3 here. And then something I already know I can do is wrap these last ones. So the username, the mid dot, and the created at, wrap these one in a div. And pull this one down. Give this the class text small. And in dark mode, give it the text gray. And I'm going to pick with a lightish gray here. And compared to the background, I think this might be the right one to use. And then we have post author name, and this wants to be text white. So just to make sure, we in dark mode use text white, and we don't depend on any other dependency. Okay, so server is there. Let's see if this HMRs. Let's refresh this one. First a hard refresh. And this should refresh any second now. Now let's something here. Hello. Refresh. Yeah, it looks like a live reload in a hot reload. It is a live reload, sadly. But yeah, I'm going to bother with that right now. We see that this light is actually too dark, so I'm going to give it a 400, which is what I actually intended to do. And 500 is more in line. Then, of course, to put them on the side, it gets boring and predictable. We need to add a flex. So flex gets these fellas on the side, and I want to align them all vertically in the center. So I'm going to say item center, so aligns them in the center. Now, one trick to address this spacing behind the username and the actual name is using space X, which gives a space between two elements in several elements in a flexbox. So we can say space X and add a 1 pixel space here. I think this already should look, let's go with a 2. Should look pretty close. Cool. And from looking at Twitter, they always prefix your username with an @ if they render it out. So we're just going to say an @ literal @ value right here. With that, looks like we're getting close to this part of the layout. So what I'm going to do next is make sure that this vertical spacing is a bit less. So PY2. And that, there you go. And I can see that our username is actually bold inside the Twitter one. So this will be font. And I'm going to start out with semi-bold. In close. I actually don't think this font is small. I think this font is normal. And the difference there. And they will use, they are using a different font at Twitter. Quickly check what it is. So the font they're using, actually font Apple system. So they use the system default font, and I actually like that. I'm not going to mess with it right now, but it's definitely something I'm going to address. I like my apps using the default font. I'm not sure whatever Tailwind uses by default. Where is this? Here you go. This is commented out, so there should be another font that is applied. Font family. I can look at the computed here and see whatever font family. It's actually the same. It should be the same. Let me get a sip of water here and think about this for a second. But no. I'm not going to worry about fonts. It's good enough as is right now. What I am going to worry about is doing these bottom line icons. So as said, flex to make them sit side by side, and now they will all stick together. So these are 4 icons stick together. Space, no, justify between. Justify between. This should give us some nice icons here. And then one of the things that catches my eye is that this doesn't take up the whole width here. And this is most likely the inner container that has my username. This takes only the width it needs to occupy. So as you can see, it now takes the whole width of the top bar here. And we actually want this thing to grow. So we can say, and that is this one, as flex grow, and this will grow it all the way to the sides. Do the right thing with the icons as well. So here we are. So having these in place brings us at a pretty nice spot, I think, to move on. I'm going to give it a bit more room so these buttons can have some margin on the top. I'm a margin top kind of person. The other people's that only apply margin on the bottom. I'm not sure. Got to use it and I like it. And yeah, so we have some room here for our tweets to live and breathe. And for an initial version, if I say so myself, this is not really bad at all. A few more posts in here, so I'm going to do copy this one and just add the same one a few more times so we have something to scroll with. And here we can see we can now scroll and this all works. So for a first version, a mobile layout, this is, I think, a pretty decent way to get started. And we built most of the stuff out here in the web layout component. Now, what I want to do next is basically add a small commit. So I'm going to open up terminal here. And I'm not even going to bother. It's fine as is. I'm going to do a git commit, gc message. And it's a feature implement UI. So this is not online yet. I will give it. I will give out the source code later. This is all going to be open source. But yeah, for now, I think this is it. And I'm going to make this a bit wider here. And what I actually like to understand is when the small, whenever the small, what is it called? Responsive viewport kicks in. So what I'm going to do is say dark, small. I'm going to put it next to the other background. So what I'm going to do is dark, small background. I'm going to make it pink for now, 900, super dark pink. And this should be a very obvious change whenever we grow the viewports to being small, because I don't really know which it is. It's not this one. It's not this one either. I think we're already at medium. So this might not be the way to address small in dark mode. Let's see if this is this small pink. That doesn't really seem to apply. Let's do something that's not addressed by dark mode at this point. I just really want to know the small mode. So I'm going to take this icon here and say it's blue by default. Little icon next to the word latest tweets. It's blue by default. And on the small viewport, I'm going to do pink. Am I mistaken? And I might already be at the small viewport. Yep, I think I am already on the small viewport, medium. Interesting. When does it grow? It doesn't grow. Medium, background, pink, 500. Better. Does it actually change? It does change. Okay, so this is good. We're working with the right one. One other thing that we already want to know, this icon here gets removed whenever it's not on the mobile view. So we can say it's a block by default. And smaller enough, it gets hidden. And this should give us a clue when we're on the small viewport. And the reason I want to know it is that, there you go, this at least gets removed. The reason I want to know this is that because the small viewport is basically the next one up. Drag this a bit to the side. Small viewport is the first one up for the Twitter layout that does not have that does have the sidebar. So Twitter already gives it like at anything that's not mobile, but we cannot really address mobile or non-mobile on this layout. So I think what I'm going to do is pop this bar to the bottom. Yep. Here as well. And take the smallest size that I can get that gets rid, that hides the icon. So there you go. Okay. I'd suggest going with mobile first. That is hidden MD block. Yeah, but this one is the opposite. So this one we want to show at mobile and then the rest not. But yeah, that's definitely true. And everything that we're going to add is going to have the hidden first and MD block because, or small block, I think small block even. First one we're going to look at, what Twitter does is here at the sidebar. And what's actually interesting, if you look at source code or the generated output, give me the elements, please. Here you go. You can see that this actually lives inside a header. There you go. So the whole sidebar in Twitter's layout is a header, which is kind of strange. Headers are generally appear on the top of the page and not on the sidebar, but hey, whatever works for them. And in our case, the top bar is actually still the middle side. So here it's latest tweets. So in our case as well. So we need to have a bar on the side. So I think I'm just going to copy them over and say header. There is a comment and add header here as a tag. And for now, do the old trick with the colors. And I'm going to give it a border and a border green 400 and say this is the navigation. And this should pop the bar on top of it. And this is where we're going to look at how to lay out this structure. So as I said before at the intro, I use grid and Tailwind makes using grid a breeze. So that's exactly what we're going to use. I'm going to add a div of grid and I'm going to say grid 12. Grid calls 12. So I got a 12 column grid. And inside this 12 column grid, I have navigation and the whole top bar basically. Yep. And the growing router outlet, and that should give us everything. Oh no, we still have the bottom bar. This. And I'm going to wrap this all inside one another grid. So let me quickly undo this. Sorry, folks. So inside the grid, I'm going to have this one, which is the header or sidebar. Then I'm going to get this one, which has the main area. This, let's take it sidebar in this part, main area in this part, and then sidebar right in this area. Sidebar right doesn't really exist yet, but that will come soon enough. And then basically all of this stuff can move into the main area. Now you might say this is a nice moment to split up your content into components, but I really want to focus on building the layout and not building out the components yet. I think that's another worry, if you will. Now this grid is definitely something that I don't want to show by default, so I just don't want to do anything with it. When I'm on small, I want to have grid. So when I'm not on small, it should not grid. And this one, I'm going to say hidden and small. And then the same main area is always visible. Same goes for the right bar, which doesn't even exist at this moment, but I'm just going to give it this class anyway and say here sidebar right will appear at some point. Take the top bar and put this one here, which is where it belongs. Now this should render out my sidebar, my left tweet, and it all meshes up around each other. And it's a big mess right now. So let's clear that one up. And the way to do this is to give grid span. Yep, it should be grid span, call span. Call span. So we have a grid of 12. And if we want to look at this from how it's done in Twitter, the main area gets the biggest chunk. So let's see that this is call span on 12. Let's say that it's at least 6. And let's make it 3 by 3 right now and fix it in a second. Call span 3 right here. And on the upper left one as well. Call span 3, and quickly toggle the top bar, the bottom bar, because I don't really need to see them all the time. Now this should at least take the whole width. There we go. Now if we browse back to this one, we can see in this layout, it's actually a very small nav. We don't have a sidebar right, and it's taken up the majority of this room. So I'm going to say that this small block is going to be at least medium block. It will be a bigger block size altogether. Yeah, okay. Good. Because then we can say, okay, medium, call span, you can say 11. No, small screen, take call span 11. And here on a small screen, take a call span of 1. And this adds up to 12. This should give us a very, very small nav and a very wide main area. Which is exactly what we're after. Now let's smooth this down a bit and get a closer look. It looks like we can use a bit bigger sidebar. So I'm going to make this 2 and make this one 10. And I think most developers prefer even numbers over odd numbers for these kind of things. I know I do. Okay. And this kind of gets into the point where it's clear that they are not using a grid system for the sidebar. And like you might get lucky. It looks like they have a breakpoint down here. So if we go from this one to this one, we see that it actually gets smaller. But this for us is still the mobile view. And at this moment, I'm not going to add custom breakpoints. You could, but I'm not really interested in Tailwind config at one point. We might look at getting it pixel perfect at some point. I try to be pragmatic in this this Saturday night live stream. Now, another thing to take into account is that in this view, what's happening. Basically, the composed tweet view got into place. So if we scroll all the way back to a small view, it's still here. But if we pick the mobile view, you can see that there's no compose in the screen. And it's actually hidden down here. Oh, that's not going to work. I need to pop this bar on the side. And so we can see it. It's actually hidden right here. There's a button and it takes you to a route/compose/tweet. And this actually brings up the same tweet component. And I like this. I like this pattern. What's also interesting to see, if we get rid of this compose tweet, it stays the same. But if we refresh on this route, we probably need a bit larger viewport here. If we refresh here, oh, this is actually not working as expected. I was about to say this there you go. At a certain point, this inline component pops out into a modal window. Here you go. I think that's pretty sweet. And definitely something I might be spending some time on at some point, depending on how far I'm going to go with actually rebuilding this UI. But for now, again, not going to bother. I'm going to bother with the sidebar. So let's bump this up until we find our sidebar, find our right viewport, and let's go with that. And here we are with our nav. Still are here with the nav. Yeah, I'm going to call this the viewport that we're working with. So quickly make sure that these are all lined up. Make it a bit larger here. And this one as well. And give this instance of real Twitter a refresh so we get something to work with. Now, cool. So we hide our sidebar on the smallest viewpoint. We hide our icon here next to latest tweets. What we need to show is a bar on the side of this one, and we need to address this. Let's address the scrolling first, and that is done by adding a hide full on this grid. And that should make sure that it doesn't scroll all the way. It does, so that is because we're missing another hide full right here. Hide full. And I might be missing it on some other spots. This one hide full. This one is the full height. I think I already know. So what we want to say is here as well. We want to say this. I'm actually not going to worry with it too much right now. I'm going to go ahead and build the nav bar out. So this nav bar has the items centered, and these are some of the icons that we can now do and make. And if this gets wider, the icons get a label. So in order to do this in a maintainable way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these top level icon white. So I'm going to say, give me a height of 8 and a width of 8. And background white. This should be our top level icon, and then the background blue for 500. And the rest of one is all white. The blue one is the active one, and the others are all white. So I'm going to have 3, and we have search, notifications, messages, profile, and the big tweet button. So this is the big tweet button, which is a button. And the button is a blue background. So let's say blue 500, and is rounded full. And I'm also going to give this a width, a height of 12 and a width of 12. So this should at least give us the objects to work with in the sidebar. It looks super messy, but we can address that. So again, making it a flex container, flex, and keeping it a flex column. So it behaves the normal way. And I want to justify things centered. So this should take care of the centering. Is it an items center? It's item center because I'm moving to column. So these look pretty good. And what I then need to do is add some padding on the top. So I'm going to do padding on the top of 3. Make sure that the icon has some room to breathe on the top level, which seems a great call. One notch smaller actually. So I'm going to go ahead and change all of these to a 7. Yeah, I think that's pretty good in terms of sizing. And then what I'm going to do is put the navigation link in their own. I'm going to call it nav. Add all these ones, and the nav is going to get a class, and it's going to get a margin top of 3 and a space y of 3 as well. And it should provide spacing between the individual icons. Here we go. And from switching back and forth, it needs more spacing. So margin top is going to be 6, and the space y is going to be 6 as well, which is probably too much, but we can always turn it down. Actually, it looks like the blue bar is pretty much spot on, and the other ones are all expanding a little bit. So I'm going to do the space x, space y, 5 right here. Get back this right viewport. Hello there. Please give me, yep. So and I think this actually, they can be one less even. So it can be space y 4. And I'm looking at the top bottom, and I'm looking at the last one there. So, yep. I don't think it's going to get any better in this moment. And for the button on the left, I'm also going to say margin top 6. I'm going to wrap it in a div, as always. And will be it for the button. One of the things I'm going to edit inside my Tailwind config is the color of blue that we're using. So we're using just the regular blue. So I'm going to go in here and say colors blue, and I want to assign this to the colors that come from Tailwind. So I'm going to say require Tailwind CSS/colors, and this should give us colors dot light blue. And for this, I think the dev server needs to restart because it doesn't pick up changes. So I'm just going to restart this one, put this one into the view, and then go from there. And something we can add on the bottom here is our user icon. And this all has a fancy drop-up menu. I'm not going to do that right now. But yeah, this is definitely something that's interesting from the UI. And when the thing is reloaded, we should be able to have a lighter color blue that's more in line with the actual color that's used here. Then the next thing to do is pick up this line. So we can already see in the main area where we spend 10 of the column, this is probably where we want to do the border as well. So I'm again going to get into my GitHub clipboard history. You cannot see this, but I can. And border on the left. And I only want to do this on the small viewport and higher. And medium viewport and higher, we're going to add the right border as well. Basically when the sidebar appears on the right. Now the top bar here stays the same. So this is the top bar. The router outlet stays the same, but what we do get here is hidden by default. Hidden. And in small, we're going to block it. And this is going to be our text area. So this has an avatar. It has a text area which says what's happening. Then we have some buttons, basically some icons. Image icons. And emoji, and then the tweet button. So this is basically how it's done, and this follows a similar pattern to the actual tweet. So back here, okay, the blue is getting bluer. That's very cool. I'm going to make it a tint darker though, so I'm going to pick up every blue that I have in this color and make it blue 600, even 700. Let's go with 600. 600 it is. We can also see that this border appeared, which is great. And in the sidebar, we now have the navigation here, which is good. We have the bottom, the icon here on the top. This is all inside the header. So what I'm about to do is add another div and move these things into there. And this will be our avatar. So we can already pick the image that we had, which is this one. Use that same here as the avatar, user avatar. The reason I added the div here is because this is already, okay, so this needs to have class flex and flex call to center, basically whatever I had here. I think. And this will have the avatar, and we need this because we want these things to split out. Yeah, there you go. So this still looks good. Let's only add the padding top here. And then what we want to do is also add a flex on here, and this is also a flex column, and that gives us the opportunity to go into this div and say flex grow, which is exactly the right thing to do. Or do we want to do flex grow on this one? Let's see if this gives us any way to do this. Okay, now it takes all the pages height, which is not what we want. I'm not sure how to address this particular case. And I don't really care. I'm going to go ahead and go here to our avatar because I want to use this exact size. It's 1212 rounded full. So make this 1212 and make this flex. Doesn't need flex call, but it does need item center. It does need flex call if we want to use that one. And margin right 8 can go because that's why it's aligning, behaving. And for now, I'm just going to say margin top of 16 to give it some spacing right here. That should be good enough for now. And this gives us the sidebar that we're looking for. Gonna get rid of the border here. So this should give us a sidebar that looks similar-ish to the one on Twitter proper. Let's move on to the input here. So this input here, we're gonna fold up this header. Gonna get rid of the server so we don't need to look at the output. And so if you look at this, you can actually see this is pretty much like a tweet. So it has the icon on the side, which takes the same size, and then content starts like same aligned. So let's not fool ourselves. And let's just copy over this bunch of stuff. So I'm going to copy over the individual tweet here. And wherever it says this stuff, we can add it in however we like. So yeah, that's this code. So here we have the avatar, and the avatar is of the user that's doing the operation. So we're going to add this avatar back here. Get rid of this variable, going to make it a normal source property and say user avatar. And where it says tweet, we don't have anything about the user info. So here it's just going to be our text area. And then the post text, same. And then inside here, the buttons can stay the same. So let's, oh, that went wrong. Let's actually get rid of this. Rid of this text. So here will be our text area. So we can say text area. And we don't really need to give it any properties like these. We can just say placeholder is what's happening. And then the buttons here are actually just 3 of them. So let's get rid of this one, and this will be image if GIF, it's GIF, emoji. And let's see where this gives us. And my editor is nagging here. So let's quickly hover over this, why it is nagging. Missing associated label. Yeah, I'm not going to add a label. Okay, so this looks rather janky, but hey, let's get started. I'm going to add some classes to this text area. So the text area will have a class of background dark, background gray 900, just like the other rest of it. So it will blend in. And actually, let's give it a border of the same. So in dark, we give it a border of gray 900. Give the border. I think rows should be 1. If that's what we want, but I think it also keeps the vertical space a bit too high. So when we look at it right here now, it actually might be right. Anyway, I'm going to go with this. Font size is larger, so text is XL. And it's pretty similar text. See, we have some padding here inside this text and inside this text area. So I'm just going to play around a little bit here and say padding X. And this already brings it closer. Maybe that should. We do have a border, and Twitter doesn't really have a border, which is, I guess, a ring property or a focus property. Let's try adding a focus property. So on dark, in focus, at the same border. Bad for accessibility, but for now, it doesn't do it. For now, I don't really care. Sorry, accessibility freaks. I don't really to say. I know it's important, but for this demo, it's not really relevant. Ring color. So this is ring. We can say ring gray 900. So let's do that. Ring gray 900 on dark. Focus. There you go. Okay, awesome. And now I can get rid of all the vertical padding and basically any padding. I'm going to get rid of any padding here. Just going to have a little small cute text input. There you go. Okay, add some 0x and a y padding of 2. Make sure it is similar. And there it goes. It's getting pretty close. One of the things this needs to do is stretch out to the full width. I think I can just add a width full here, width full. See if this does it. And that does it. Now there might be an option to get rid of this little nugget here, this little handle that allows us to drag it. This is also something I don't really care about it right now. It should be good enough to show that it's the Twitter UI, and that's it. Another thing that's interesting, everyone can reply. There's a little drop down here. Not something I'm going to look at right now, but definitely something I want to look at when I'm working on the actual implementation of the form, because then we can do some nice tricks with formally to happen on focus and without focus. These little buttons need to go on the side, and this big button needs to go there. So this is already justified between, which is exactly what we want, which means that we take 3 images here and put them in one div. And we're going to take another div that has the tweet button. So it has a button with text of tweet and a class of dark background gray, no, blue, 600 width, pretty sure. This is rounded full. Rounded full. And I'm going to get a X margin of 3 and a Y margin of 1. Yes. And this, friends, should be a bit more how it is. Okay, cool. Yep, this is closer. Flex here. And add some space between. So space. max of 3. These ones are actually also blue, so I'm going to give them blue 600. These are our icons, little icons up there. So the tweet button has a bit higher, so this is going to be 2, and then this is going to be 4. And I'm going to make the font semi-bold. And in dark mode, it's going to be text white, which is an explicit thing that we're already having. Here we are. And one of the things you see that they don't align, and the icons, no, the icons are actually pretty well sized. So let's add here item center to make sure that these things center on the y-axis. And this should bring us pretty close to where we want to be right now. So cool. I'd like to understand why this scrolling doesn't really work. It would be nice if we could have it work well. Oh, okay, it already broke right here. And this is most likely that I need to add a overflow right here. Overflow auto on the grid that I added. There, no, that doesn't give us the right behavior. It gets rid of the top bar. Really, I'm really experimenting right now. I'm just checking out how to make this work. I'm not familiar enough with CSS to know exactly how this works. I tend to get it right sometimes, often. I like to think, but not this moment. Now, to check the larger viewport, I actually need more space, and that would get in the way of my editor, because as you can see right now, it starts to get all too much. So there's a few things we need to do in order to get this viewport. But one of the things is that I need to go into a separate screen. So I'm going to pull out this browser that I have, and this is going to be flipping screens for a bit, which I hope you all don't mind. Going to put the bar on the side here. Going to go to Twitter, close, and open the bar. And this should give us a 3-column layout. And if we then scroll this back in, we can see, okay, there's one viewport change. And this is the layout that we're actually working with. So this might be a great starting point just to make sure that our layout on this viewport looks similar-ish. And you can already see that it doesn't really look similar. Now, if we check out this one, and here, this is what the division of them is. What I mentioned earlier in the live stream. Twitter just has some hard-coded values here. It's like, okay, header is this, main is that, and they work with that. We don't really do this, so I think I'm going to look at adding a container that wraps around this, and see if I can make it work with that container. So I'm just going to close this, open it again. Same here, does not. Close and open this one. Same again. So a container. And we might actually apply it on the, so let's go these two, those didn't really do anything. We're going to look at container. And I want this to be medium and up. If we apply a container, I want to MX auto, which center aligns it. There you go. Okay, this makes me happy. This does make me happy because it looks like we're getting somewhere. I'm going to quickly look at the container spec, and actually I think I want to look at the max width. Yeah, max width MD, max width LG. This might be what we're after. So instead of adding a container, adding in the medium viewport, a max width MD. Let's see where this brings us. This is too small. medium, large. Much bigger. XL. This is really not what we're after. 2XL, 3XL, 4XL, 6XL. Let's see where this brings us. No, this is not what we want to do. And let's quickly peek into what it, how it actually got applied. So this is our 12 grid. It has the max, in medium viewport, it has the max width of 6XL applied. And when we go look at styles here, right here, you can see it has a max width of 72 rems. Possibly it's also this getting in the way. Let's quickly get rid of these ones. Okay, interesting. I'm gonna get rid of the MD MX Auto right here. And I'm probably making a mistake, a mental mistake. This is not what we're after. Let's quickly look at the container classes, what they got to offer. Control Command K and search for container. And we can see that there's a container on the breakpoint. And we can take these center by default, horizontal padding, which is all nice, but it's not what we're after. Okay, one more attempt. Just change this back to MD container. See if we can fix something with the padding here. This doesn't align auto. I'm amazed that it doesn't. Actually, I think I'm going to leave it for here for a second and leave this viewport the stranger one, if you will. So when we're medium and higher, I want to show a border right, which gives us the line on the right. Now what I could do is add some padding to get this bar on the side. Or actually, even simpler. Maybe we just need to Here we are. This actually looks pretty good. So here's the deal. On small, we're going to say call span 9. On medium, we're going to say call span 10, and we're going to leave it there. On medium, call span 9. And then once we're large, then we're going to do whatever we need to do to render this fella, which is the sidebar right, which currently is not visible. This needs a medium large. Call span something large. We want to block display, block it. And then the one we just did on large, so we have 3 down there, 12 in total. We're going to say large and give this one 6, 7. It's all a bit trickery with the viewports and the grid columns. But here we are, and this should give us a sidebar. There you go, sidebar on the right when we're in this viewport. And now I'm going to go ahead, close this, open this up. There you go. Okay, now we're getting a bit closer. And actually a responsive variance. So the responsive variance. Okay, so actually what it might be is that on, where's the container? Right here on the MD, we want a container. I don't want a container. Can I disable a container? I don't think I can. I don't think I can do this. Yes, okay, so what I can do is make the top level column smaller. So what I can say on large, you are goal span 1. And on extra large, you're going to have it appear. So then on large, this is going to get goal span 8. To make sure that we're all back in 12 at any point. Okay. And next 7, right one, 7, and this one should get a 4 span on this viewport. It's a huge sidebar, but it is huge. Okay, I'm going to back to the home page here. So we have our initial view with the what's happening. So we have a good thing to compare to. And I'm going to do the sidebar right now. So the sidebar, as we can see, has 3 elements, basically. Well, 4 maybe. No, it's 3. It has search Twitter, relevant people, or basically who this is whoever's in this tweet. Yeah, this is the homepage. So we have a search bar here. We have what's happening and who to follow. They all have these both have a search more link, and then we have some social or some like official site-wide pages, cookie policy, ads, info, all that jitter. Now, what's interesting to see is that the search bar stays on top. So this needs the same treatment as the top bar, which at some point we broke, and I'll hopefully fix at some point. This is drop down, not going to worry about that. That's all details. But let's add the what's happening, who to follow, and search Twitter. So I'm going to quickly grab these one, who to follow, what's happening. And I'm going to close this main area right here. So I'm going to add a div, and this is going to do the search. And I'm going to add a div and another one. And the last one is going to be who to follow. And the last one is going to be what's happening. Search is going to be an input, type search. And placeholder is search Twitter. And the class of this thing is that the background in the dark mode, the background is gray 900, and in the dark mode, the text gray 100 or 300. I think we had it. This needs some padding, so I'm going to go with an X padding of 4, and it's super tight to the top. So I'm going to say a Y padding of 1. It's something I'm going to copy over inside this one and here as well. And another thing they all have in common is that they're rounded full. So this one is rounded full because it's just a smallish thing. These ones have a rounded large. In order to see this and to see that they have a round, they actually need a background that's lighter than the background of the page. So we're going to take 800 here. Also for this input, we're going to see 800 as the input. The PX and the PY here also need a margin on the top. So we're going to say margin top, we're going to give these 6. And they have a what's happening, which is basically the label. They have a show more, which is a link. So we're going to say class is text blue 500, 600. And say show more. Write this one right here, put it in a div because that's easier to position. And all the way down, we're going to have a div with margin top 6. Margin top 6, and this div is also going to have a px of 4 and a py of 1, just like the other. And it's going to have a few links, and they're going to be text gray. I think I'm going to use 400 for this, which is privacy, policy, terms of service, and copyright. Or copy ampersand 20. And let's give these a mid dot so they have something to separate them out. And yeah, these are links at the bottom. So let's scroll back and see what this got us. Okay, so not too bad to start with. Two things to note: we should give these what's happening and who to follow some more room, and we should give them a background. So I'm used to using Bootstrap, and this is where you work with dark as the color. Here is not a color, it should be gray. So yeah, one thing I'd like to see into the IntelliSense integration is that it would say like, hey, I cannot understand whatever the F you mean. That's where we are today. Okay, so we need to have some more space between the sidebar and it's the main view. And the text needs to be bolder, and that's we need to have some more spacing as well. So let's address these things. So in order to address that, I'm going to go ahead and do this one, a margin left of 6 as well. And inside the div that says what's happening, and the other ones as well actually show more, I'm going to say padding of 2 on the side and 1 top and bottom. Should give them a bit more spacing. I can use a lesser value of margin left. So let's do this a 4. And then go here. We can have a rounder border, so we can say round it and do XL. These can have a font that's semi-bold here. Let's see what that looks like. So what's happening? And so we can use a little bit less padding on the x-axis. And text is larger, so we can give that semi-bold here. Also say text large. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, they can use a bit less on the x-axis. Well, yeah, so it shows really nicely proportionate. Now this is getting closer and closer. I think the text might be bold actually, so let's make that bold. And hopefully that gives the, yeah, I think this is where we're going to leave it. And lastly, what we want to do is add some things that's happening, people to follow, and then the links are already there. So let's see. Okay, these definitely can use a smaller font, and they're inset a little bit. They're basically right below the show more link. Let's tweak that. So these links, all of them is going to be addressed right here, and it's going to be text small. And I'm going to add just more horizontal padding. Let's give it a 6 here to see where that gives us. You can even use more. So that's 10. 10. Not too much. Sweet spot is in the middle. 8. Give me an 8. Awesome. Looks great. And they have a little bit too much margin on the top, so I'm going to go with a 4 here. And these ones, the show more, they can do a border on the top. So I'm going to paste in my border class right here, border top, which should give them a border. And that already shows an issue. Like we want to have the whole border, so we shouldn't actually use padding inside these things. So I'm right here. This should collapse it all a little bit. Yep, that was expected. But it gives us a nice place to fix that collapse, basically inside all these ones. So we already do some padding. So up this one to 4 and up this one to 2. And I think it should bring us to a place pretty similar. What's happening? Yeah. Show more link has some space. And then actually the things happening is trending in where a label and some footer. And this seems to vary a little bit. We have images, some have a time, some don't, some is a whole tweet. I'm going to go with another thing. And for this, I'm going to use the web layout component, PS. And I'm going to say what's happening. I'm fairly sure I never used that property before, so that's a unique one. Title is going to be trending in web development. Time yesterday. Text. Tailwind CSS is taking over the world. And footer, let's make this title, make that header. And footer is related item. See how I did this in the example. Let's quickly go here to the TMP, Tailwind Twitter, trending in. I'm sure I used this inside here. Trending Tailwind CSS. Tailwind takes over the world. That's that. That's the tweets actually. Trending. I made a mistake here. Trending with. And this gives a link. Trending with. Software development 3 hours ago. Ah, yeah, and another awesome one. What's happening? Narwhal releases version 11 of @NX-Dev tools. And go back to this app component, trending with app code. So this is trending with app code. Another section of Twitter. And let's add this one here as well, this footer. Okay, cool. And now I can just loop over the items in what's happening inside here. So I'm going to get an ng container and say ng for that item of what's happening. And this is going to take a copy of this div and going to have item.header. Div here, item.header, mid dot, item dot, and this is classed. I'm going to use the same text gray 400 here. Text gray 400. I think this is going to be text small. And same I'm going to use for the footer. So in here, say item.footer. And inside here, this is not what I want. Sometimes my keyboard just gets crazy. I think I need to charge it. And then here, item.text. And this should render us out 2 items in the bar. What's happening? So let's go how that looks. There you go, web trending. Trending in web development yesterday. Tailwind CSS taken over the world. So this looks pretty much the same. We need to make this font white and make it larger. So the text itself is class text white and font text large. And give it a margin bottom here, margin 2. That's what it seems to have. Tailwind CSS. And I don't think we need to change the text to be large. I think we need to say font semi-bold, maybe even bold. This is something I learned with using Tailwind and looking at a bunch of videos. You can make accents in text in various ways. You can change the color, you can change the size, you can change the boldness. I was generally always using size. So more important font is a larger size, but it actually works pretty well to use other things to accent this. As you can see, this seems to work pretty well. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make this header and footer even a notch smaller. So I'm going to pick up the text small right here. Text small makes it extra small. Let's see what that brings us. Yeah, this looks good. I like this. So what's happening block right here? And I think that looks pretty good. Who to follow is pretty similar. It has an avatar, username, and that's it. I'm not going to be bothered with promote it. It also has like a follows you text, but I'm not going to do that right here. So what I'm doing, who to follow, and that's going to be the next one. And probably the last one for today. So in our component here, I'm going to say who to follow. And I'm going to go ahead and say username NXDev tools. R1X as a name. Avatar URL. We're going to just go with a block here, but that's not an issue. Copy these ones over. Bsoft Labs, even though I am Bsoft Labs, I don't care. Bsoft Labs. And connect a mind. Connect a mind. Connect a mind. Actually, this is all lowercase. Connect a mind. Mind right here, and then I'm going to copy over these ones because this is super similar. And then inside the who to follow, I'm going to say let item of who to follow. Then what we need to do here is add a flexbox again, add an avatar, and this avatar is going to be similar to a button. And I think we have things with -12. Yep, this is going to be it. But I'm not going to do an avatar right now. I'm going to do an H12. And it's just going to be a regular div. Close it here. And this is going to have the background dark, background gray of 600. Let's do sleep, background blue 600. So this is our avatar. Put in its own div. And the other div is going to have the text. So this is going to have item name. And actually the username is the one that goes in gray. So this will be username, and name, which will go in white. White, and it doesn't have any text size, so it's text size normal. And the last thing we want to worry about is the button here that says follow. So we're going to have another div and say a button with the text of follow. And the button is going to have a rounded full. It's going to have a horizontal padding of 4 and a vertical padding of 1, 2. And it's going to have a border. In dark mode, it's going to have a border to 600. And in dark mode, 600. And then we'll go. Here inside the flex container, we're going to justify all the stuff between. And on the middle one, we're going to say flex grow. And then on the avatar, we need a bit of spacing. So we're going to say margin top, margin right 6. And now this should give us the who to follow. There you go. Okay, we have a bit, margin is a bit on the large size. The icons are good. Follow needs to have a border. So the way to get the border is actually add the border property, because right now it has a size of 0. And margin right here, I'm going to bring it back to 3. And with that, I think only thing left to do, okay, 2 things left to do. One is say item center. So item center in the horizontal axis. I'm going to make the button a bit tinier. So we're going to have an Y of 3 at 1 and an X of 2. Let's see how this renders out. Font is actually bolder. So we say font semi-bold. This looks like it has more on the X. Lastly, do an @ here in front of the username, because that's how the username gets printed. So who to follow here? There we go. And this all looks pretty good if you ask me. I'm going to get rid of the extra small and just make it small for the username. There we are. And yeah, I think that is where I'm going to leave it here tonight. Let me quickly search this pink one at the top and make it a blue 600. So background blue 600. Without leaving yet, I'm not going to leave yet. For those of you watching, I want to see, okay, this doesn't work at the largest viewport. So this is something to address, because on large viewports, we definitely need a container. Check, I don't have a container anymore. We do have a container. Interesting. So this is definitely something I need to figure out, but for now, this works as is. And yeah, I'm going to take some time to figure out what I missed and what I screwed up here by doing the, by getting rid of this, but it scrolls. Another thing that's interesting to know, if you look at Twitter's UI, they actually have something that I really haven't thought of seen, and that is they have some sort of vertical responsiveness. So generally, responsiveness that I know only works in the horizontal way. That's the most frequently explained. And if you see, like here, we have the minimal amount of like 6 of these menu items. And then when we scroll down further and they got more horizontal space, they'll get a new item. So there you go, bookmarks get added here. And what you can see is that at some point they will get more spacing. Here you go. So they have some sort of, they have probably some new viewports that got added. And yeah, this is definitely interesting. If you want to fully understand and appreciate the layout, go ahead and implement it, because that's generally the best way to figure it out. I'm going to leave it here. For the next time, we're going to look at these Hoover states. I'm going to make sure that the container works. We can go look at these Hoover states. Maybe add some routing in, maybe add the messages tab in, or the bookmarks here. Lists, I'm probably not going to bother. Profile is interesting as well, because we can display our own profile and our own tweets. So yeah, definitely check in for that one. This was BEEMAN.DEV live stream, Saturday night live stream. I hope you all enjoyed it, and see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.